Welcome to episode 30 of Whole Lot of Wolves. We're your hosts. I'm Joshua Buckley.
I'm Paul LePage.
And we've got a past guest here by popular demand, Mr. Alex Winter from Almonte Springs, Florida. How you doing today?
I'm doing all right, Josh. How about you there? Outside of course, the terrible game that happened yesterday, I've tried to block that out of my memory completely. So I'm just pretending it didn't happen, but I know I'll need to talk about it here. So bring back some bad memories.
Talking about things is the best type of therapy. Alex first joined us on episode 14. If you'd like to go back and listen to his story, you can check out that episode. And slightly different format this week with a two-part special that we're going to talk a little bit more about that later. But let's go in to talk about what happened on Sunday. I took notes and then I looked and all I saw was a big picture of a pile of shit. Paul, that is did you have anything to add to that?
I woke up about 6:45 on Sunday morning after a terrible nightmare of having Chris Wood score a first half hat trick. So I just couldn't quite believe it. It was a nightmare. It was terrible. It was the worst showing I've seen in goodness knows how long. Just no heart, no battle, absolutely nothing. Didn't even lay a glove on Burnley at home. And all due respect to Burnley, you know exactly what you get on the tin when it's a Sean Dyche team. And we had no answer to it. I could probably guess his instructions to his team before they came out would have been, oh, just run at them, get in their faces, run as much as you can, try and knock them off their stride, try and get an early goal and bully them. And that's exactly what they did. And we had absolutely no comeback to it. It was shocking. I think first 10 minutes, maybe, Willian had a nice run, looked like a good move coming together, and that fell through. That was probably the sum total of his output through the whole game. Nouri had a nice run. Where's that been? And that was it. That was literally it. From that point onwards, it was just, it was a nightmare. It was a horror show.
What do you think, Alex?
It was just they had gotten over the 40-point barrier the weekend before, and basically they said, we're not going to challenge for anything else. We're just going to basically sit on the beach and not run and not really care about it. When Chris Wood is like beating you off the break with it there, you're giving zero effort with that. I would say Nori is like the only one I could say out of the group that could have his head held high a little bit. But other than that, it was just everyone was just thinking about the offseason. They were not paying attention to this game. Hopefully they were looking over this game for next week instead of just giving up entirely. But it was just a poor display. And a team like Burnley, I can't even remember the last time that Burnley has scored 4 goals in a game. It's shambolic. It's not a good sight to see, and it's one that I'd rather forget. And hopefully Nuno can really spur these guys, and it can wake us up before we play the Baggies.
But it's like that, isn't it, though, Alex? When have we ever had a game like that? When have we came up against a team that's got little or nothing left to play for and played them off the park and won at a counter? It hardly never happens.
Yeah.
Probably the end of last season when Everton came to the Molineux, they were in a similar situation. They weren't doing anything. We comfortably beat them 3-0. But that's the closest I've seen to anything when it comes to the Wolves. We're not a team that goes and sticks 4 past the side. It was beyond a joke. We made Chris Wood look like Didier Drogba in his prime, just bullying defenders, turning him inside out with his feet, dominating in the air. You just knew the writing was on the wall for when that ball came over and Bolly misjudged it and he came back with a great tackle. But from that point onwards, it was just one-way traffic.
And then he made the exact same mistake like a minute later.
Yeah.
So, I thought Chris Wood's third goal really just said it all on the corner. He was the only one that jumped up for it.
Yeah.
All the other Wolves players just watched it watched it sail over.
What was most
So
disappointing for me, I think, when you have a first half that bad, was there wasn't a substitution or two at half time, even a change in formation straight away to say these are the areas that we get battered in, because there was next to no midfield. Even bringing some of the players off that were underperforming, it would have been hard to pick two because they all were. But even then, that should have been a statement that we're in trouble here. Let's try and at least do something positive from the get-go and at least show some effort, not wait for the first 10 minutes to bypass and then make changes. That was disappointing for me, that wasn't recognised, and they didn't come out with any gusto in the second half to try and up the tempo. Even that was missing.
They've lost their fight. Normally in past season, when down 3-0, they try to fight back and they try to go on ahead and really try and make a game of it. Recently against West Ham, when they made it the 3-2 with it there was some fight back, but there was really none today. And I feel that the infusion of youth has to come in with it there. I was really hoping for Otasowie to get in and really take charge, because a physical presence that could handle a bit of the onrush of Burnley, and he was nowhere to be found. Fabio Silva is not meant for the Burnley type of game. He is a very technical player and a promising talent, but he's not meant for that type of match. And it's really just, hey, these are the guys that we always put on as subs, and no real imagination, inventiveness by Nuno.
Yeah. Even to that point with Otasowie, I'm sure he'd have done a much better job than Dendoncker did, especially when he coughed it up in the second half and then shit out of the challenge. That was just appalling. I love Dendoncker. He's been brilliant, but I despise with a passion when you pussy out of challenges like that was.
mm-hmm.
And Willian was the same as well. It's just get stuck in, show some balls, man.
Yeah. Where Adama almost got that red card, it went to VAR. Were you surprised that he got away with just a yellow?
I was actually quite impressed how the ref handled it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if he hadn't handled it in that way, then he probably would have got a straight red. I think taking a step back and looking at the situation, how it came about, I've seen him given, obviously, but I think the way the ref handled it gave Adama a pass. Plus the fact that the guy didn't go down flailing his arms or anything. He made a gesture to say that he'd been tickled on the face, but it wasn't like a big cowering fall. So that may have helped him in his favour. But
if that had been Grealish, man, you would have thought there.
True, yeah.
He went up against Drago.
So yeah, you got to be careful, obviously, because it wouldn't have made a difference yesterday, but for those upcoming games, it certainly would have. So I think we can all be thankful for that.
Absolutely. I think with a lot of the controversial decisions throughout the Premier League last weekend with offsides and everything, the refs were just really, really careful to really make sure to get the right decision. And I think that played a big part in why Adama didn't get the red, was just all the backlash from the week prior made it so much more important to get these decisions.
Yeah, agreed.
Plus, the Wolves didn't try and mutiny against the EPL. Maybe that was our one that we got.
Yeah.
Okay, so I try and ignore this. I try and stay off Wolves Twitter as much as possible because it's ridiculous sometimes. But you were seeing it a lot on Sunday, questioning Nuno and if he's the right person from here on out. Paul and I have made it clear that, hey, you just got to chalk up this year to something weird. Do you feel the same way, Alex?
Yeah, I'm a fan of Nuno. I'm Nuno in. He's the best manager we've had in a long time. And it's someone that I think the only reason I would think Nuno would not to go is if Wolves management decide to abandon the going towards the breaking into the top six and breaking into all that and just remain a self-sustaining mid-table club. And if it's the latter, if it's the mid-table, I'm not sure Nuno will get that passion back. if there's a big investment in this upcoming window, I really think that Nuno is the best man for the job. These are his players. This is his system. He is the right man to lead us moving forward. He might play defensively at times, but it's what gets results. It's what's been helping when we've lacked goals this season. We've been able to get enough points and get enough wins to really be safe and not really worry about relegation throughout, just be a comfortable mid-table side. And I'm certainly Nuno in that he, once everything gets a little bit more back to normal, fans go in the stadium again, I think things will get better. Yeah.
You still feel the same way, Paul?
Pretty much. I'm of a belief that this pre-season is going to be crucial to everything what Alex just touched upon, crucial to the whole project. I think if that's what the plan is still, with Nuno at the helm, I think it would take a considerable amount of investment to really push this team forward and make the changes that he wants. And I think that's down to players that's going to come in and the caliber of players. If they are missing, is Nuno brought into the status quo? The only other thing I can think would be if Fosun have that ambition and there's someone that they perceive as better out there. I don't know who that may be at the moment, but on the flip side, whilst I remain Nuno in, I genuinely think it's going to be a blip this season. I think we're going to use it to learn from, strengthen the squad, and move forwards. But there's no room for sentimentality either. That we've seen it in the past, going back to previous trips to the Premier League when we hung on by goal difference in Mick McCarthy's last full season. And really, that should have been his defining moment, that we should never be in that position again. So if Nuno has run his course, performances like that scare me from yesterday, because it just gives you a horrible feeling that, has he lost the dressing room? I'd hate it for that to be the case. If Nuno goes, I'd be absolutely gutted, because it's been the best era of my support in life, bar none, and he's been at the fulcrum of it. I would be crushed, but I'd certainly understand that there isn't any room for sentimentality. If there is someone better out there and they get the backing, who knows? But again, get the season over and done with, see what the close season brings. It's not fair, really, to cast someone aside based on the craziness of this season, based on the pandemic, based on the injuries that we've had, the illnesses that we've had, that's factored into it. Maybe Nuno does have to think more about his apparent choice. They say that it's down to him, that we've got a small squad and that's done on purpose. Maybe that needs changing, because again, looking on that bench yesterday, he couldn't really turn around and pick out a general or two. Moutinho wasn't there. He couldn't call on Moutinho to say, hey, go on and get a grip of this game for me. There wasn't another prolific striker to come on. Fabio is effectively a youth player when you look at him in age and development terms. So I think that needs looking at as well. If you factor all of that into the mix, if we get 3 or 4 quality additions that can come into the starting 11 and that bench gets strengthened even more, then I think we'll be okay. But I'm worried. I am after yesterday. I'm worried about it.
I think if they did decide to move on for Nuno, they might as well just sell everybody, because they've built it. He's built this team. No other Premier League coach would have picked as many Portugal players, and none of the backline guys would start under another manager, I don't think, especially after that performance. Yeah, I don't see how they could do it. I think you got to give them one more year, and then if it goes wrong, okay, but then you're almost going to have to start over and risk the chance of being relegated the next season.
Yeah, or it's a case of, you hear about these Portuguese coaches that are bandied about from Portugal, and they've come over and they've had a stint at Sheffield Wednesday or Watford or Nottingham Forest, and it's just these no marks that, really, if we want to kick on, it's got to be an upgrade on Nuno. It's got to be an upgrade on someone who's kept us comfortably in the Premier League this season. It will be comfortably in the end, We haven't been in a relegation battle per se. He's got 2 7th place finishes, FA
Yeah.
Cup semi-final, Europa quarter-final. If that's the benchmark, who is it? It's not
Yeah.
some guy that kicks around for a season in Europe. It needs someone who's got that pedigree to take us to the next level.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's hard to get that type of results from any manager. The only one that, I mean, is out there, which has already been mooted out, and I think is the right decision to not consider him in the off chance that something happens, which I don't want it to happen, it is Jose, and I would not want him in our club. So.
Oh man. Yeah, no, I don't think that would go over very well.
Yeah.
It's a type of decision like Leicester made in sacking Ranieri. And even that went wrong initially, and it was only their second go around to actually bring Brendan Rodgers in. So it's got to be, if that decision is made, it's got to be a very strategic one and have a really good faith that they've got the right guy. My comparison to last season, again, talking Everton, would have been Ancelotti. Is there someone of his profile out there? And again, I'm scratching my head. I think I saw Maurizio Sarri mentioned today, and he's got his flaws as well from Chelsea. So it's a head scratcher if they are going to pull the trigger. Let's just hope that it doesn't come to that.
Do you feel like yesterday's game really showed we need at least 2 new center backs, maybe 3? I hate to say it because I think Cody is worth more than just his play. I think his leadership also comes into play. But do you feel that, would you have confidence in Bali and Saiss going forward?
I personally, Saiss is a great rotational player. He's not a everyday starter. I think that he's a great rotational player. You plug in when either a midfielder or a center back is hurt. He's one that is certainly good to remain as a squad player. Bully is... the question is whether he's healthy and that sort of thing. With a lot of Wolves this season, there's been players that have come back from injury a little early, and it's uncertain whether everyone is truly healthy. You're not sure if Podence is healthy. Of course, Johnny re-injured his ACL and MCL from that, and then look at a lot of it from just pushing the same players harder and harder. I think that we need a couple of center backs. I'm not sure if we'd get rid of any of the center backs per se, but I'd say we actually have a larger squad so you can rotate everyone and have fresh players coming in every game or so. And that's something that I understand. I mean, moving up to the Premier League, it's hard to maintain a big squad there, especially when it costs so much to bring in any player of starting quality. I understand the small squad mentality and keeping everyone happy, but I think there's a certain point where there's the balance of keeping everyone happy versus keeping everyone healthy, and there's a middle ground there. And I think a few more players, I'd say an attacking midfielder, a couple center backs, and another winger are minimums at least.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a considerable season in terms of those bodies if they do come in and the status that they've got to be at, because Saiss, Bolly, and Cody were all from the Championship as well.
Mm-hmm.
But Saiss is only really fallen into centre-back by accident, really, and by necessity, whereas that investment in a quality centre-back has really been missing over these 3 years. That's a crucial one for me, especially if there is a transition to a more formal 4 at the back. There really has to be an absolute stud that's the leader of the whole defence when it comes to that. Maybe you could plug in a Cody and he could pick up something from him. The flaws in his game could be overcome by this new guy. Similar for Bolly, like you mentioned, is age creeping up on him a little bit. Is he nears 30? Is he getting the odd knock and niggle that's having an impact? It seems like he's got an error in him as well. So is there someone that could complement him more, that can take the pressure off somewhat and allow Bolly to concentrate on his natural game? So I think centre-back, either 1 or 2 new arrivals, is absolutely crucial.
Okay, guys. So really cool news. I discovered a time machine today. So I want you to go back over we'll say the last 2 seasons. There is one move that Fosun made that you would talk them out of making. One signing. Who would it be? I'll start you out, Paul.
One signing that I wouldn't want Fosun to make, probably Marcel, because again, I think that move was made in terms of trying to strengthen the squad, not necessarily the first 11. And I think if they'd have had someone more robust of a similar profile of player, but someone more reliable, more robust, it could have allowed the Johnny absence to be not as tough, I suppose. And also ease the burden on Out Nuri as well, because I'm pretty sure, like Fabio, they didn't want him having necessarily as many minutes back to back at the age of 19 in full-flung Premier League games. So I'd be more recent and look at that Marcel signing, even though it was relatively pennies and not too much of a commitment. I still think we've suffered from it.
Yeah, and my personal opinion, even though I believe he's a talent and will come through, having that huge outlay on Fabio Silva, I think we weren't at the point in our club to splash out that much on a guy who won't be necessarily good for another couple of years. And I feel that 35 million could have filled a lot more holes that have shown up this year. And even though I think Fabio will be good and will come good, I feel that in the immediate term, it would have been more beneficial to spread that amongst 2 or 3 people.
Mine would be Nelson Semedo. Man, I just was expecting a whole lot more from him. And he's solid, but he's not worth the amount that they paid Barcelona for him. Feel like there would have been a lot other cheaper options that could have been doing the same job. Okay, and one more thing, you can change history. What is one person that you could convince Fosun to sign within the last 2 years? Like, just tell them, hey, it's worth whatever money you have to spend, and convince them. Who would that be?
I mean, the obvious choice would be Cristiano Ronaldo, but I don't think that would ever happen. So.
It has to be somebody that was linked to Wolves, like legitimately.
Yeah, like legitimately. And the one that I would probably say, it's a tough one to think about.
Wait, there is only one correct answer to this, so I'll let you guys see if you guys can get this.
If I'm not mistaken, wasn't Souček linked to us?
He was.
Yeah. And I feel that would fit with how good he is at West Ham, and really the domineering offensive presence at midfield that can go ahead and really attack the ball, something that Dendoncker tries to do but is not that successful at. I feel he would have been a great addition to us personally.
Let's see if we're on the same page.
It's got to be Ruben Diaz at centre back.
It's Ruben Diaz, yes.
But even prior to that, when we were linked with Pepe, and people were dismissing Pepe at 34, 35, he's past it and everything. And it's just that type of, that's what you need sometimes, is that little bit of craft at centre back, that little bit of nastiness, someone who's got the nous. I look back to, Ruben Diaz in an ideal world, but someone like a Pepe, just for 2 years in a Moutinho mold, but as a centre back, bring another youngster on alongside him, something like that, I think we could have benefited from in the long run as well. So
I just wish 2 years ago, when they had a chance, they would have opened up the coffers then, knowing they were going to Europe, knowing you're off of Fresh 7 before the pandemic. I just wish they.
And again, they've not gone full tilt at a decent, good centre back. Ryan Bennett was starting in the first season in the Premier League and did an admirable job, and he certainly would have done better yesterday. But he was a free transfer from Norwich, who, that was even pre-Nuno. So, where's the investment when it comes to centre back? Where's that domineering midfielder? It's apparent that we haven't had anyone even close to it since Alfred and Dye in the Championship, and he wasn't signed. So that tells me if there was a role for a player like that in the Championship, then there certainly should have been one in the Premier League, and that's where I'm looking as well. It's going to be a big summer, I think.
I'm starting to think that Neves may be the one that they sell off this summer to try and use those funds to fill some holes. I don't know. And that would be extremely risky, knowing Moutinho's more than likely not going to be with the team. But I could see them potentially thinking that direction if they got to sell somebody.
Yeah, and there are a lot of guys that, I mean, it depends on how much they are going to invest. You have guys like Catrone, you have guys like Mir, you have guys like Vinagre. You have quite a few people on the peripheral. I honestly think that a way that Wolves are going to save money and potentially be better. I believe that even though I'm a fan of him, even though he, on the looks of it, he doesn't look that great, but I'm a fan of Semedo, but I think Semedo is not going to stay with us next season. And I think that we are going to get Doherty back with it there. I think that because he was brought in Mourinho's setup and different like that, it was a player that he wanted, and of course he's gone and wasn't even playing in that setup. It depends on who comes to Spurs, but I feel that it's going to be a return for him, and we'll gain a bit of money on that to add with other sales to basically further strengthen our spine.
Oh, now Alex has opened up a whole new line of questioning here. Semedo, do you think they'd lose money on a sale from last year?
I feel that, especially since clubs have continued to be hit by the pandemic, I feel that they would make less money than they would have prior to, basically they would sell them on. But I don't think it would be a major loss. I feel that they got him for about like 25 million. I think they might get him for sell him for a little under 20. I feel that there will be some loss, but I feel that there's still enough of a presence as a former Barcelona right back who started week in and week out in the Premier League to have some suitors out there.
Paul, would you do this? Would you work out a deal with Tottenham where they send, let's say, 18 to 20 mil and Darty for Semedo? Would you do it?
I probably would in those terms. I probably would. But he's been disappointing in terms of he's not matched his value. But inclined to, again, it goes on to next season. I'd be inclined to give Semedo the benefit of the doubt that with a full pre-season, proper squad around him, less chopping and changing when it comes to the players he's playing at the back with, by both personnel and formation-wise, I think he'll be okay. The only negative to that is it wasn't like he was a young pup like Neto 1920. He was an established senior player moving for a lot of money, and he's not hit that valuation yet. Yeah, it's potential. I don't think we'd get close to recouping our money, and to that point, I think we're going to have to be, and I think the whole market's going to have to be clever with their players and their joint transfers and swaps with money involved. I think it's going to turn into more of those types of deals that it's funds and a player. So possibly if something's dressed up like that, maybe.
Real quick, back to Burnley. Would we all agree that the man of the match was the final whistle?
Yep. Yeah, that was the man of the match, certainly. Yeah.
And did you watch the entire game, or did you go back to bed like I did?
Once it was halftime, I was like, forget it. I stayed up, but I took my dog for a walk to clear my head and get all that stress out. But I did not end up watching it past halftime, just because knowing Wolves and how little goals they score this season, I was not expecting anything other than a loss at that point. So.
Yeah, I started to zone out when they didn't make any changes at halftime, and then they had that goal disallowed by VAR, and that just showed that ship wasn't turning in any stretch. So mine got put. It was still on in the background, but I just concentrating and getting some breakfast ready, and lo and behold, they went and scored a fourth. So I think we're all accurate in what was going to happen in that second half.
There's something that the Wolves want you to know. Best in the world, and he comes from Mexico. I'm number 9. Give him the ball and he'll score every time.
Are there any social shout outs this week, Paul?
Yes, Josh, we've got some good ones. It's that part of the show where we like to hear about the part of the world where you listen to the podcast from. So you can let us know on our Twitter, Facebook, or by emailing hello@wholelotofwolves.com. And you even get bonus points if you share a picture too. So try and do that. First up is Chris Wood. He was on the show again a couple of weeks ago. Chris is from Columbus, Ohio. Next on Twitter, it was Wolfman Jeff. He tells us that he's on a porch yelling at passers-by. So for those of you that follow Wolfman Jeff, I think you can agree that he's probably excellent at yelling at passers-by. And finally, he just missed the cutoff for last week's show, but it's Wayne McKee, who tells us that he's a new listener of about 3 weeks to the podcast, originally from Bridgnorth, Shropshire back in the UK, but now in Melbourne, Australia, and loving the podcast. So good day, Wayne, and we appreciate the love.
That's awesome to see all the Wolves fans around the world that are starting to listen to a whole lot of Wolves. So we're holding off an upcoming preview match for this episode. And do you want to tell listeners why, Paul?
That's right. Given the magnitude of the upcoming opponents and the occasion that brings, still think it's important that we take America back to school and teach them everything we can about this rivalry with West Bromwich Albion. We Hate Albion 101 with Bully back on episode 17. So this week we bring you more into the modern era of the rivalry with a local lad. He made 250 appearances for the club over 7 seasons, with a few of those being in the EPL and many of those games as captain. We're going to be speaking to Carl Henry. So that interview will take place Wednesday morning, which is April the 28th, and it's going to be at 10 a.m. Central Time. And there's a chance for you to actually participate in this interview. So if you're free on Wednesday at 10 Central, you're free to come on and want to ask Carl a question, then all you need to do is email us at hello@wholelotofwolves.com and ask for the meeting invite. We'll share that with you, and you can come on and ask your question of Carl Henry. If you can't participate at that time, I realise it's the middle of the morning in an American working week, but you've still got a question that you would like to ask of Carl, then use that same email address to send it to us, along with your name and hometown, and we'll ask Carl on your behalf. So we'll be back with you after that this week. Until then, listeners, up the Wolves.